The sprawling Phakisa complex is an impressive facility, with competitors looking forward to tackling a full-blown Grand Prix circuit, and none more so than the South African production car brigade, where the racing is hugely competitive. The qualifying sessions were loaded with drama, and Sasol Nissan driver Leroy Poulter continued his impressive run of form.
Yeah, my car was good throughout the day. We had the pace, went out by myself, got pole for both heats, and yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, look, I thought it was going to rain yesterday afternoon just before qualifying, but yeah, the weather's held up and today's great, yeah.
Matters were a little more complicated for Craig Nicholson in the Stayback Nissan.
No, that was the strangest thing. In qualifying yesterday, got the car sideways and was about to spin it into a wall and took a big armful of lock to try and swing the front end the other way, and my shoulder just popped out of its socket, so it was all pretty exciting. But it seemed to pop itself back in as soon as I tried to put the car back in gear, so no harm done. It's a little stiff, but I think we'll be fine today.
Reigning South African champion Anthony Taylor was preparing for two close races.
Yeah, it is quite close, and also further back down the field is also very tight. The second race is going to be very interesting with the Audi on third, because they're extremely good off the line, so I think it's going to be quite a good race.
The first 5 cars on the grid were all under the 1-minute 50-second barrier, with only 2 seconds separating the top 10 cars. There was also little to choose between the cars in Class T.
There's 0.1 in it. It's extremely close. The GTRs have taken off at least 2 seconds on their time, so you know we're getting worried for the first 2 laps. But I think thereafter it's going to be the minis are a little bit more consistent, and you know we worked on the suspension a little bit more, so it might just keep us in the lead.
Adding interest to the mix, a second Golf GTI joined the Class T fray at Phakisa.
Ons is 'n bietjie van die pas af. Maar ek seker met Williams Racing en MFC en Minolta, Konica Venito, sal ons seker op die pace wees die volgende race.
In Class B, a Toyota versus Mercedes-Benz battle was brewing.
Well, our car, our chassis favours the circuit. We're going to try and give it our best, you know. And last year we've beat the lap record on the 58.3, whereby it was the 58.5, and yeah, but the Toyotas have just had an upper edge on us. So hopefully in the race, in race trim, let's see what happens. You know, anything can go either way.
Championship leaders Clint Weston and Dave Compton set the pace in Class T and in Class B, with a gearbox problem preventing Eckhard Skoenknecht from posting a qualifying time in the Caltex Golf GTI. Down in Class C, it was the experienced Wayne Masters who set the early pace in the VW Golf TDI.
No, well, the TDI has been well set up from the previous owner. It won Class C championship last year. So basically I had to do is just get in the car and drive the car. And because I'm used to petrol, I had to adapt my driving style to learn the diesel, and I'm getting along and it's coming right. I think the car is very quick. It's just got to try and maintain it through the race. That's the problem with the weight of these cars. But I think we'll get it right.
Wayne Masters edged out Trevor Tuck and Johan Kruger on the Class C grid, with the scene set for 2 interesting South African production car races. Heat 1 of the South African production cars got underway, with Anthony Taylor making the perfect start in the Castrol BMW. At the first corner, there was clear air between Taylor and Leroy Poulter in the Sasol Nissan, with the rest of the Class A runners jockeying for position behind them. It was just the start Taylor would have wanted. Richard Sorensen was in early trouble, with the rest of the field streaming past the N-Gen Extreme Audi. Craig Nicholson in the Sabat Nissan was also in a spot of early bother, and an off-road excursion saw him drop down amongst the Class T and Class B cars. Race cam action is from Richard Rutz in the Bosel Nissan, and ahead of him Steve Morris in the DAW Affinta BMW. The field was starting to settle down when Gary Formato found himself running out of road, and in quick succession, Melville Priest's Audi, Chop Sepuka in the Nissan, Steve Morris and Richard Rutz steamed past the factory Sasol AE Nissan. The net result was that Formato was down to 9th, and some hard work ahead of him. Frustration can often be the right ingredient to get a race driver fired up. It did not take Gary Formato long to win back a place, and he sailed past Richard Rutz at the end of the back straight. And next in his sights were teammate Chop Sepuka and Steve Morris, who were involved in a fierce tussle. At the front of the field, Anthony Taylor and Leroy Poulter were edging away from Etienne van der Linde in the second Castrol BMW, with multiple SA champion Johan Fourie next up in the MD Transport Audi. Anthony Taylor is hugely experienced and a cool customer, and Leroy Poulter knew there wasn't going to be an easy way to get past the champion. All he could do was apply pressure and hope Taylor would be forced into a mistake. Further back in the field, Craig Nicholson found himself embroiled with the leading bunch in Class B, with the Sasol Toyotas of Dave Compton and Philip Kakana locked in battle with Carlos Nobre in the diesel Mercedes-Benz. Race cam action is from the Mercedes-Benz, and intent on their own fight, the Class B trio weren't inclined to do Nicholson any favors, and he was struggling to get clear of the slower cars. The Class A train streaming down the back straight, but the beauty of the Production Car Championship is that somewhere in the field there is bound to be action or drama unfolding. Way behind the leaders, the Class C brigade were all over each other, with current championship leader Rob Prius dropping down the pecking order via a spin. Back with the leaders, and with just over half the race distance completed, Anthony Taylor was now coming under some serious pressure from Leroy Poulter. Taylor and Poulter had now pulled away from Etienne van der Linde and Johan Fourie, and it was a two-car race with the Nissan drivers still faced with a problem. Apart from the high-risk, all-or-nothing attempt at getting past the BMW, Poulter had little option but to stay where he was and hope for a lapse in concentration from Taylor. Van der Linde and Fourie weren't a major threat to the race leaders, but behind them, Chop Sepuka and Gary Formato had passed the Audi of Melville Priest. Going into the Phakisa outing, it hadn't been a happy season for Formato, and teammate or no teammate, he wasn't in the mood to take prisoners. An unhappy race ended for Michael Stephen when he pulled into the outfield to retire the Engine Extreme Audi. As he pulled off the track, Wayne Masters, Dion Kraus and Johan Kruger were chasing after runaway Class C leader Trevor Tuck in the Motorsport Infinity Fiat Palio. After his own car was written off in Cape Town, Tuck was out in Tianus Elov's car and showing indecent speed. Tagged on at the end of this little train was Mark Silverwood in the M&R Ford Icon, who gave himself an anxious moment or two at the end of the back straight. Masters, Kraus and Kruger were closely bunched, and their only problem was that they were around 2 seconds behind class leader Tuck. On the Class T front, the Castrol Mini Cooper S pair of Clint Weston and Garth Weberski were in total control. Championship leader Weston had a comfortable cushion over Weberski, who was under no threat from the Caltex VW Golf GTI of Eckhart Schoenknecht. Class newcomer Etienne Prinsloo was a further 8 or 9 seconds behind the second Golf GTI. Also having a comfortable time of it as the race wound down was Class B champion and current class leader Dave Compton in the Sasol Toyota Runex. Teammate Philip Kakana retired after just 4 laps, but Compton steadily pulled away from the diesel Mercedes-Benz of Carlos Nobre, with KwaZulu-Natal driver Brian Martin a distant third in the Pretoria North Toyota Runex. Back at the start-finish line, the Castrol BMW team were getting ready to cheer home Anthony Taylor as he put the finishing touches to his second win of the season. Leroy Poulter's run of podium finishes continued, with Johan Fourie, Etienne van der Linde and Gary Formato completing the top 5. The Castrol Mini Cooper pair of Clint Weston and Garth Weberski were untroubled in taking Class T ahead of Eckhart Schoenknecht and Etienne Prinsloo. Dave Compton grabbed his 5th Class B win of the season ahead of Carlos Nobre and Brian Martin. On the Class C front, a welcome return to form for Trevor Tuck ahead of Wayne Masters, Dion Kraus and Johan Kruger. After the race, we caught up with overall winner Anthony Taylor.
Yeah, I had an awesome start, and from there on, Leroy was on my case the whole time. There wasn't any room for error. I think if I had made half a mistake, he would have been there. So, yeah, it's just really 100% concentration all the time and just keeping it together, getting the clean laps in.
No prizes for guessing how Class C winner Trevor Tuck felt about matters.
Yeah, I must say it was a great result. Cape Town obviously a bitter disappointment, but today's made up for it. As you said, Tien's car that I'm using today, he has a wedding, and the car went perfectly. It's beautiful. The whole race was just good. The car was neat and tidy the whole time, so I'm really happy.
Race 2 underway, a little argy-bargy at the first corner, and more drama for the unfortunate Richard Sorensen. One severely damaged Engine Extreme Audi out of the race, a thoroughly disgruntled driver heading back to the pits, and at the front of the field some serious action with the Castrol BMWs of Anthony Taylor and Etienne van der Linde fighting it out with the Sasol Nissan's 350Zs of Leroy Poulter and Gary Formato, plus Johan Verrees MD Transport Audi A4. Steve Morris in the DAW Affinta BMW was all Formato could see in his mirrors, and the much anticipated production car war was well underway. Down the back straight with Etienne van der Linde leading from Anthony Taylor, Leroy Poulter and Johan Verrees. Behind Verrees, there was an almighty scrap developing between Gary Formato and Stephen Morris, and sitting behind the wheel of a Class A production car at Phakisa Freeway was definitely no place for the faint of heart. Stephen Morris and Gary Formato decided to occupy the same piece of road at the same time, and there was contact between the two cars. Formato managed to maintain his track position, but the incident had damaged his Sasol Nissan suspension, and the car sailed straight on at the left-hander, leading onto the pit straight. At the front, Leroy Poulter squeezed past Anthony Taylor into second place, while Johan Verrees headed up a closely knit group of Nissans, Audis and BMWs. Michael Stephen, with his factory Engine Extreme Audi restored to full health, was in the middle of the group. Here he chases the Bosel Nissan 350Z of Richard Rutz and the Affinta Part BMW of Robert Wolk through the tight Phakisa infield. While Leroy Poulter was mixing it at the front of the field, the other two members of the Sasol Nissan team were taking a little strain. Chop Sipuka was working his way through back markers after his earlier collision with Sorensen's Audi, while Gary Formato was limping slowly back to the pits. Damage to the Sipuka car was cosmetic, while in the pits, technicians swarmed around the Formato car, frantically working on the front right suspension. Gary Formato's problems were of no interest whatsoever to the race leaders, where Etienne van der Linde now led from Leroy Poulter, Johan Verrees and Anthony Taylor. Behind them, Stephen Morris was being chased by Melville Priest's Audi, and the afternoon went pear-shaped for Craig Nicholson when he got a bit over-enthusiastic and spun the Sabat Nissan 350Z. Back in the pits, Gary Formato was ready to go out again, but this was by now a lost cause, and he failed to be listed among the official race finishers. In Class B, Dave Compton's Sasol Toyota was chased by a hard-driving Carlos Nobre in his diesel-powered Caltex Mercedes-Benz, with Marco de Cunha's Fiat Stilo Abarth and the turbocharged Volkswagen Golf GTI of series newcomer Etienne Prinsloo in close attendance. Prinsloo, a club racing graduate, found the pace of national championship production car racing rather tough, and he sensibly settled for a safe fourth place in Class T. At the front of the class, conservative driving was the very last thing on the mind of Castrol Mini Cooper S pilot Clint Weston. He blasted around Phakisa at record-breaking pace, en route to his second victory of the day. Behind him, Garth Weberski's identical Castrol Mini Cooper S came under relentless attack from the Havilene Volkswagen Golf GTI of youngster Eckart Schoenknecht. Schoenknecht, last year's Class C champion, is getting quicker on every outing with the new Golf 5 GTI. If that trend continues, the vehicle's first national championship race victory can surely not be far away. Meanwhile, experts predict the arrival of at least 2 more Golf GTIs during the course of the season. In Class A, the tussle for overall victory was now led by Etienne van der Linde's BMW, with Johan Verrees' Audi, Leroy Poulter's Nissan and Anthony Taylor's BMW all within striking range. The foursome's rapid pace saw them gradually breaking away from the rest of the field, while watching one another like hawks for the slightest hint of a driving error or any other signs of weakness. Luckily, back markers like Mark Silverwood in his Ford Icon heeded blue flags and moved over to give the front four plenty of elbow room. In terms of the 2006 title chase, current points leader Leroy Poulter could afford to settle for a third place in the Nissan, since it put him ahead of Anthony Taylor, his nearest Class A championship rival. Taylor, aware of the situation, used his BMW to attack Poulter fiercely during the final few laps. The Phakisa Raceway's high altitude makes it a user-friendly place for forcing ducted cars, like Carlos Nobre's Mercedes-Benz C270 CDI. Driving his turbo diesel vehicle in spirited fashion, Nobre challenged Dave Compton for the Class B lead, but the Toyota Run-X's RSI's nimble handling gave Compton an unbeatable advantage. He went on to score his third victory of the season, consolidating an already comfortable points lead in the Class B title fight. The Class C race victory went to Wayne Masters in the Vendator Volkswagen Polo TDI. Masters drove his turbo diesel car smoothly and impeccably, using its power advantage at Phakisa to beat the Fiat Palio of Trevor Tuck into second place. At the front of the field, Etienne van der Linde hung on to win from Johan Fourie, Leroy Poulter and Anthony Taylor. The leading four cars were covered by less than a second over the finish line. It hardly gets closer than that. Melville Priest and Steve Morris rounded out the top 6 places. Afterwards, we spoke to Etienne van der Linde about his victory.
Yeah, basically, I think everyone had the same sort of problem in the second heat with, the tyres had quite a high mileage on, so I think everyone was sort of fighting their cars in the second heat. But, coming from the first heat, we made major changes to the setup. And yeah, it definitely seemed to work. Had a good start, got up to third, and then obviously Leroy and Anthony tangled a bit going into the hairpin, which just gave me the gap to go through. After that, they were fighting each other and holding each other back, which sort of kept me in front. I didn't really have the outright pace to stay in front, and once they sorted themselves out, I just had to play pretty defensive towards the end.
Mini drivers Clint Weston and Garth Waberski took the Class T honours, with Dave Compton and Carlos Nobre the top men in Class B.
We've done a fantastic job this weekend. We had a lot of trouble in Cape Town, and the team's fought back tremendously. I must thank Henny, Freddie and all the guys for doing such a fantastic job for this weekend.
Wayne Masters used turbo diesel power to win Class C ahead of Trevor Tuck and John Kruger.
It was difficult. The first heat I battled. The second heat I had a good start, but Trevor was with me for the first 2 laps, and I thought it's gonna be difficult to get to leave him. Luckily, Brian Martin, I got him in between myself and Trevor, and that helped me build a bit of a gap. And then I towed behind Brian and just tried to keep the pace. It was brilliant. The car held together, but it took a toll with the weight. The tires can't handle the weight. But anyway, I did my best, and we got a result there.